Hello everyone, my name is Christian and welcome to my hobby blog. So today I am going to do my top 25, movies that I own. There are a lot of movies that I love that have, changed, who I am, and that has made a huge impact on my life, but I wanted to go through my collection and choose my top 25 and show you guys kind of, what I lean towards in terms of what I enjoy, what I like, so on and so forth. So I got this idea because I was thinking about, as I was going through each label, like Criterion, Era, Vinegar Syndrome, and all that, I was like, I should do a greater, best of video. And one of my good friends, Alfonsina, she asked me, what are my favorite movies, and it kept getting, shuffled around. I was like, well, I like this movie a lot, but this one I like more. So today I wanted to just attempt to put out my top 25 and put in where I think they would go if I were to list them from 25 to my top one. So there will be some surprises. I think there will be some movies where people say, you think that's your favorite movie? Okay, that's weird. But I think a lot of them will make sense if you know me pretty well and if you've heard me talk about movies. So let's get started. We're going to start from my 25th favorite and then go all the way to my favorite movie that I own. So first and foremost, this is a movie that I love a lot, and it's probably much higher on the list, but as I was getting the stack together, I found that everything else I just loved more. So this isn't like a something to be held against this movie. I really love this movie. I mean, I own about 200 movies. I'm at 192, I think. But this is Brian Usner's Society. This movie is really amazing the less you know going into it. So I don't want to go into plot, but I love the mysteries going around in this movie. I love the atmosphere. I think the main star, Billy, or his character's name is Billy, but it's played by, the actor's name is also Bill, but he's played by Billy Warlock, and his performance is just hilarious. A lot of the characters in this movie kind of overact, which I love. I love it when movies, when actors just kind of go a little too far sometimes. But towards the end of the movie is when this really gets, flippin' good. I love the twist in this movie, and I don't want anybody to look up the twist before seeing this movie. But I love the cover for this, so it's really weird. I'll give you guys a hint. So this very much belongs in the body horror genre, where Cronenberg is very well known in, where the human body is the source of horror, and that is just a disgusting thing in this world. And this movie really goes beyond horror. This is the first movie that made me feel sick while watching it once the twist happened, and I was like, I love this. I'm so happy to have this. So this is 25. I'm gonna just stack it here, I guess. So the next one is gonna be a shocker. This is a movie I grew up on and I loved it. The music is phenomenal. The main actor, Dick Van Dyke, is one of my favorites. But this movie is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So I remember owning this on VHS, and I just watched it every day. I mean, a lot of kids do that, I think, is that they'll just latch onto a single movie and just watch it every day for years. And this was that for me. along with the Jackie Chan movie I talked about in an earlier video. But I love this movie. It is so magical. Just this sense of love to like technology and how just it's so hard to talk about. But I just really love the scenes in the beginning when Caractacus, who Dick Van Dyke plays, restores the car. You can kind of see it here. But this is very much like one of my favorites. And I really love the special features on this because Dick Van Dyke is like 100 years old and he's still alive. And there's like a special feature interview with him on here. And there's also a really cool, I guess, audio recording where before they even shot the movie, they made all the songs, and the main composer guy plays them all in like kind of its rough form. And it's just him and a piano, and he goes, and a lot of the songs were like unchanged by the time they came around to filming this. This is one of my favorite movies ever. I still watch it pretty regularly, but for years I forgot about this movie, and it was like 4 years ago, I want to say, I found it in the school library, and I was like, oh my god. I immediately rewatched it, loved it still, so went and got it on Blu-ray for like $5 or something. So that's 24. I hope you guys can see that. So this next one is one I discovered recently that I really love. It is my 23rd favorite movie. This is what Home Alone completely stole off of. It is Deadly Games, otherwise known as Dial Code Santa Claus. I love this cover. It's why I picked it up. I knew nothing about this movie. It looked really cool, and I was like, okay, like, this could be fun. A Santa Claus horror movie. It's more of a thriller. What it's about is a mentally deranged man gets, like, told off by a woman who ends up being a toy manufacturer, like, manager for a toy company. And her son lives in, like, a huge, like, castle, and the millionaires, and dad's not in the picture. And so they just have a lot of money. And the mother, her father, takes care of the kid while she's at work. And one day, she, like, tells off a mentally deranged man, so he hunts her down and finds out that she lives in, like, a castle. And so he decides to kidnap the son to hold for ransom. But, as I said earlier, Home Alone stole from this movie. This movie is from, like, let's see, from 1989, and Home Alone came out, like, a year or two later. And they totally ripped off of this. One of my big issues with Home Alone is that it's a little too silly, because I always love the premise of someone coming in to, like, you know, kidnap someone, like a kid, and then they are, like, ingenious with, like, technology, and, like, they MacGyver their way to, like, stay, you know, in the home. And my big issue is that, like, every time the, like, burglars get injured, nothing happens. Like, there's a little soft red spot on their head, but, like, in this movie, the kid uses flamethrowers, he has a nail gun, and it's a very bloody movie, and I just loved this movie. It's a great Christmas movie to watch. They mix a lot of, like, 80s action tropes into this. I mean, you can see the kid right there. He looks like a rainbow. And they even have the scene early, I think it's the opening scene, where the kid is, like, doing the, you know, black streaks across his eyes, and he's, like, working out with dumbbells, and it's so funny, and I just love this movie. It's very atmospheric, so it can be slow at times, and the music is very, like, you know, magical and, you know, piano-y, but this is one of my favorite Christmas movies ever. I'm so happy to own this. So, that is 23. So the next one would be higher, and it usually is. It's usually my top. But when you consider everything else in this list, like, this is my 22, and this is David Cronenberg's Videodrome. I really love the weird, like, plot in this movie about how there's a mysterious radio station that gives you, like, headaches, and it slowly morphs your body, and I really like, what's his face? What's his name? James Woods, he plays the main guy, and as the movie goes on, he becomes more insane, and he has, like, hand pistols, like, his entire hand from here to here is just, like, flesh, and, like, a gun made of flesh, and he has, like, a stomach vagina that he stores the gun inside of so no one can find it, and it's just the weirdest body horror movie ever, and I rewatch it, like, every year because there's always something to piece out. There's a lot of different, like, not mysteries, but just little things where it's like, huh? What is going on? And this was my first Cronenberg, if I remember. Maybe The Fly, but this is such a weird, like, sci-fi horror movie. It's kind of sci-fi. I mean, the premise is very sci-fi. It's about a guy who works at a television station. He finds this, like, super illegal television station where it looks real, but it's actually, like, real. Because they say it was like, wow, this production cost is so high. Like, it looks like they're actually killing her, and they are. And he goes down this rabbit hole to figure out where to find the TV station. So David Cronenberg's Videodrome is 21. I guess 21. 22, something. But everyone should go see this. It is not for the weak stomachs, though. It is really weird and grotesque. So, a guy gets melted. It's pretty fun. That was 22, so yeah. So this one is one that I've seen a lot, but I unfortunately haven't upgraded it, even though I should, because I love the packaging too much to, like, get rid of it. But it is Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So for years I have been wanting to see this, and I was never allowed to watch it growing up, for good reason, but I finally picked it up, like, really cheap. For like $2, I think I got this. And I watched it, and I was like, this is one of the best horror movies ever. And it's just, I love the dinner scene about halfway through where you have Leatherface and his whole family eating together, and they are just batshit insane throughout. And the premise is one that's no longer really that interesting. But this was the first movie to do the, like, college kids go on vacation and they drive in the middle of nowhere and they get captured. Like Hills Have Eyes or anything else like that. So, I really like this movie. It's one of my favorites. I watch it every 31 days of Halloween. There's a lot of special features on this, and I think I went through them a long time ago, but I haven't thought about it. But this is one of my favorite horror movies ever. So I love Leatherface. I love the behind the scenes documentary that talks about the guy behind the mask and how, like, he was the most loveliest, soft person ever. And he plays this, like, horrifying, deranged dude. So that is 21. Yep, that is movie 21, my 21st choice. Best movie I own. So this one, I don't think anybody knows about. Will introduced this to me when I was like a freshman in college for, I think, cult films class. Or it was in my third semester, third semester when I was a sophomore in the fall. And this movie is so fun to watch with people who have no idea what to expect or like watch from this movie. It is Killer Condom. So this movie is exactly what it sounds like. It's about a killer condom that becomes sentient, and it starts biting dudes' dicks off at a like brothel. And this movie is just so funny, and it's in German, so there's a lot of jokes about like it takes place in America, and it's so funny, like the little American like Easter eggs maybe, or like generalizations that they make. But this movie is just so much fun to watch in a group of friends, and there's so many like funny lines throughout the movie. Like the tagline for this movie is "the rubber that rubs you out." Like you can't go on there. It is so funny. But my issue is that it's not on Blu-ray, and I've seen this movie so many times that the DVD is getting scratched up by like the Blu-ray player. So I have to be careful now when I watch this. I have to like really want to watch it, because I don't know if they're ever going to release a Blu-ray. I hope they do. I hope Vinegar Syndrome releases this. But that is my 20th favorite, is Killer Condom. Okay, so this is a twofer right here. This is two movies that I kind of stuck in one slot because the same director, but it is Rudy Ray Moore's Disco Godfather and Dolomite. So I prefer Disco Godfather. I think it's a better movie. But Dolomite is just way more fun. I love the passion and just the personality of Rudy Ray Moore. And there was a recent Netflix movie that came out called Dolomite Is My Name. It has Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore. And it's like a biopic about Rudy Ray Moore and how he was a comedian rapper who like slowly build up money by selling like really raunchy and like inappropriate comedy recordings or whatever on records, on like vinyls. And one day he had enough money that he was like, I want to make a movie. Like I've seen so many movies, I want to make one myself. And that was Dolomite. That was the first one he made. And this is so charming. You can tell that nobody knew how to make a film, because on this release by Vinegar Syndrome, they have the alternate full-frame boom mic version where they didn't like know how to frame a shot really all that well. And so like every time that you would see a boom mic like floating in like every scene. It's so funny. Like, you should take a shot every time you see a boom mic come down, but you'll die. But Disco Godfather, I think, is the next movie he made. This one, I think, is much better, like, as a film, because it is very well paced. The acting is much better. There's a lot more commentary about, like, how drugs really kind of fucked up black neighborhoods in the 70s. And this is just, I really enjoy this movie. I think the ending is probably one of the best endings that he's done. But if you want a fun time, watch Dolomite. If you want a better film, watch this. So this is my 19th spot. I'm cheating a little bit, but that's okay. More movies for you guys to learn about and add to your list. So 19. This one is kind of a cheating one. It's also a 2-for-1. So it is Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. So I think the first one, again, is a better movie. Like, it's a better horror movie. And the third one is a lot funnier, has a lot more quips that Freddy says when he kills people. And I love that they use Dungeons and Dragons as, like, a plot element. Where you have our main character from the first movie, she becomes a psychiatrist for people who have, like, sleep paralysis and like nightmares all the time. And so she meets up with a bunch of kids and they love D&D and they're in a mental asylum, so there's like not much else they can do. And one by one the kids get killed off, and finally the psychiatrist like helps them kind of take over in the dream world, and each one becomes like a wizard. One ends up being a punk rocker, like with like switchblade knives, and like it's so much fun, the third one. But I think the first one's a much better movie, in my opinion. So that is 18 on my spot. So this one, I am shocked there isn't a good Blu-ray of it. There was a good Blu-ray release in Japan, but not in the States. So it is Ju-on or The Grudge. This was what the movie The Grudge was in America. It was based on this movie. It's about a house that is cursed because a father murders his entire family, and spirits arise from the murder, and they're so pissed off that every time someone moves into the house, they get murdered. And this is such an effective horror movie, in my opinion. I really like this movie. There's no jump scares, which I can rant about all day, but nothing scares me more than like a pasty white human like standing in a corner of a room and screeching at me, because that's what happens. And there's a part in the movie where one of our side characters is like in bed and she hears the Grudge giving that like throaty sound that I used to be able to do perfectly when I was young, when I first watched this. And she's like turning around the room, like looking around, and then like it's framed in a way where you see like the end of the bed kind of rise just slightly, and she's like pulling up the covers, and the little boy is like squad, and then like kills her. And that's probably like the most awesome death, in my opinion, in like a serious J-horror movie, a Japanese horror genre. But there needs to be a good Blu-ray release of this and the rest of the series. And hold on. So I want there to be a horror Blu-ray set for Ju-on for this series. I did not put this on for this list, by the way, but I do really love these movies, but I just love Ju-on more. But I want there to be a great Blu-ray release like this for the Ju-on series. So that is 17, I think. 18, 19, 20. Or 16, I don't know. But I'm stacking it right here so you can see. So this one is one of my favorite horror comedies that I've ever seen, and that is Dan O'Bannon's Return of the Living Dead. The premise of this movie is that Night of the Living Dead was real and the government covered it up. And they packaged all the zombies into like stasis barrels that would keep the flesh from like rotting away and like spreading the zombie virus. And one day a like veterinarian like body part farm accidentally opens one and everybody gets sick. Well, it's just 2 people, but they get sick and all the bodies in the warehouse become zombies. and they try to contain it. And there's a number for, like, to call to the government if it becomes released, and they wait till the very last minute. But this movie is so funny. This was the first, like, zomcom, if you will. And it's a very punk rock movie, too, which I really like. And I love the effects. The Tar Man is very memorable as a zombie. He's that little figure right there. Oh, yep. And this is a Linnea Quigley. That's her right there. She is super hot in this movie. She has a scene where she dances on top of a gravestone or a tombstone and dances naked. So if you're into that, watch this. But there's a lot more than that on this movie, where there's just a lot of great kills, great blood. There's a really cool documentary about the 1980s and the shift from, like, really, like, awful, like, horrible horror movies from the 70s, like Texas Chainsaw and Last House on the Left, and how it kind of migrated to more, like, funny and more, like, humans are kind of the villains. I know they did that in the 70s, but there's a documentary all about it that you can watch, but it's really good. I love this movie so much. So this is another zombie movie. It is Train to Busan, a South Korean zombie movie. This movie is so well done. It's like an action horror movie. And I love how the zombies are in this movie. Because not only do they run, but they are very, I guess, just scary. Because this is like if World War Z was good. I don't know if you guys seen that movie from like 10 years ago. But World War Z had those zombies where they would, like, swarm into a giant pile and then, like, get to places that they couldn't get to individually. And this movie has all of that. And it's all practical effects. There's a really awful effect in the beginning of a zombie deer, but it's only shown for, like, a few seconds, so. But, I really like this movie. I'm shocked by how good it was, because this was a movie I kind of just bought at Best Buy when I was, like, hanging out with, like, my dad or something, picking something up. And I really enjoy this movie. The scares are very effective. I think there's a few jump scares, but it's not, like, obnoxious. So everyone should watch this if you're a fan of zombie movies. I'm going to assume that was, like, 15 or 14. Okay, so this is definitely a cheat, because I can't decide which one I like more. And I try to limit it to one per director. But this is the Dead Trilogy by George A. Romero, beginning with Night of the Living Dead, then Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead. So I love all of these for different reasons. I love Night of the Living Dead because of the filmmaking, the acting. I love the little parallels to real life with the Civil War. Well, not Civil War, but civil rights and the Vietnam War. And just, it's a very effective movie. But I love Dawn of the Dead more because it's more fun. But it's a lot more chaotic in terms of the filmmaking. And because there's, like, no Blu-ray release that's good right now. And then I love Day of the Dead because of the special effects and all that, so. I can't decide which one I love more, so I'm just sticking them all together. I love all of these for different reasons. And George A. Romero is just at his best in these movies. Really, the only other movie by him that I really want is Martin. I love that movie more than all three of these, but there's no Blu-ray release. So maybe I don't love it as more. Maybe I'd lump it into a 4 for 1 if I owned it, but I don't. So if you want to watch the original zombie movie, the first one, that wasn't like Caribbean ghouls, you should go watch this. The Criterion release is filled with special features. So Dawn of the Dead is a lot of fun in that this is what spawned everyone saying, like, what would I do in a zombie apocalypse? Because they hole up in a mall, and there's so many options for them to stay alive, to how to kill zombies, you know, so on and so forth. So all three of these are great. I love them. That was, I don't know what number we're at now, but... Okay, I think we're about halfway done, but this one is not a 2-for-1. This is just one. And the movie is Joe Dante's Gremlins 2. I have the double pack, so... But I love Gremlins 2. I remember the first time I saw it, and it just blew my mind. It is a gag a second. And there are so many great jokes and, like, references, I guess. Like, Christopher Lee shows up, and his character's name is Dr. Catheter. And he works in a hospital called, like, Blood and something. It's like every second there's a really funny joke. And the first one is amazing. I love it. But the second one just blows me away every time. There's 100 million things to notice. And I notice more each time. I love Dick Miller's appearance in this. He appears in every Joe Dante movie. But Dick Miller is so funny in this movie. What happens to him. And Phoebe Cates is, like, amazing. She is very, like, just not noticing what's going on with her, I guess, husband at this point of the series. But Gremlins 2 is easily my favorite movie of Joe Dante's. Howling and Piranha are, like, really good, but this is up there. So that is Gremlins 2. I think this is 13. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay, this is 15, I believe. I don't know anymore, but... So this next one is one that I've been watching for years, that I really love. A lot of these are shockingly not Asian, like, focused. Because a lot of my collection is Japanese or South Korean. And this is a Japanese movie. But this is one of my favorite weird... how would you say? It's like... It's very psychedelic. But I've talked about it on the channel before. But 1977 was a very good year for movies. And this came out during this year. And this is... House. I love the font artwork too. But this is a haunted house movie where a bunch of Japanese schoolgirls who are like 16, 17 go to a haunted house where one of the aunts live at. And shenanigans happens. And I don't even want to, like, talk about all that much. But one thing that I love is that there's a documentary on here that kind of explains where the director got his ideas for the movie. And it ends up that he and his, like, 7 or 8-year-old daughter would, like, talk every day, like, after school when she came back. And he'd be like, think of something scary or something really funny. And she'd be like, what if someone went to go get a watermelon from the well? Because in Japan, one, like, old way that they used to keep watermelons cold is that they would have it at the bottom of a well where the water was cold. And they would pull it up whenever they wanted to eat it. And the daughter was like, wouldn't it be weird if, like, someone did that and there was, like, a human head? And then that head came alive and flew around and then bit you on the butt? And the director was like, yeah, that'd be pretty weird. I'm going to put it in the movie. And it's, like, a bunch of these, like, little gags or scenes where they all get, like, mashed together. And there's a human eating piano at one point. This movie is just really weird and so funny. And it's an hour and 28 minutes long, which is like the perfect length in my opinion. But this is just such a fun movie. I love this movie a lot. This is Nobuhiko Obayashi's House, 1977. Okay, so this is a Southeast Asian movie, one that I don't think many people know about, and I think more people should. It is The Protector. This is the best martial arts movie ever, in my opinion. I love Bruce Lee, I love Jackie Chan, but Tony Jaa is a total badass, and I love him. This movie is just insane to watch. This is a movie everybody should watch because the action is very well done. The camera doesn't bam, 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 like, in like the Bourne movies with not Jason Statham, with Matt Damon. In this movie, it's just like the camera sits back and they just punch each other and do flips and like all this stuff. There's a part in this movie where Tony Jaa is fighting up a tower, like a hotel. And it's just one shot as you follow him, and windows are broken, bones are broken, people are thrown like 10 stories and fall on like a wooden building. And they never cut. It's just one take. And then the end fight is like 30 minutes long as he fights a bunch of big buff dudes. And he uses 2 elephant tusks to like cut the tendons so that they can't like move. This movie's awesome. It's one of my favorites. And I just picked this up on Blu-ray like a few months ago because it finally got released. But this movie is just so awesome. I love showing this to people. It's a lot of fun. So this one's another horror movie. It's one that's really fun, but also pretty terrifying. It is Stuart Gordon's Reanimated. So this movie's about med students who accidentally not accidentally, I guess one of them has been trying to make a resurrection like vaccine, I guess. And he finds the solution. You can see Jeffrey Combs is right there with the head, and he brings someone back. But he makes a dose of like resurrection, and he accidentally resurrects somebody, and they come back violent, and the zombie virus spreads. This movie is so funny. And Barbara Crampton is probably just the most beautiful woman ever. And she is an absolute scream queen in this movie. She was so brave for some of the scenes that she had to do for this movie. But I love the effects in this movie. This was actually my first Error video that I ever bought. Error video release. But this is just such a fun horror movie. It's very bloody. There's an unrated cut that they made, and like it wasn't available forever, and they finally made it, like, I guess widespread release. But there's a lot of documentaries and commentaries on this release that just make the movie even better. So this is Reanimated, I think 1984. I have no idea, but this movie's awesome. So I realized when I was making this list that I had no like serious movies, like films. And so I grabbed my favorite non-weird horror movie. And this is easily one of my favorite serious movies, like Citizen Kane or, The Godfather. But this is Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. This movie is just very well done technically. I love the acting. I love like how each phase of the movie displays the effects of evolution of the human race Because first you get the monkeys, where you get, that famous scene where they smash the bones for the first time using tools. And before they get that, an alien obelisk shows up. So an alien obelisk shows up in like 8 times, like millions of years ago. And it gives them the knowledge of tools and like using bones to like as a weapon. And then that kind of speeds human race along, and it goes all the way to like present day for us, I guess, where humankind has gone onto the moon and they find an alien obelisk again. And this time it gives them the knowledge of, I guess, interplanetary travel, and the human race advances again. And then I can't remember exactly what happens at the end, but basically one of the scientists who is like traveling to another planet, he discovers a black hole, and that's like the final evolution of man, is becoming the Star Child. That happens at the end. I love that entire concept. I love the weird LSD field montage that happens about towards the end. The making of documentary on here is incredible. There's a lot of little things they did for this movie that I was like, how is that a miniature? Like, the way that they made this film and all the props and all that is just incredible. So this is one of my favorite movies ever. Although there's a lot other movies that I like more, obviously. But I had to put in a serious movie, and this movie is one I really love. I don't watch it often just because, it's a long movie and you don't want to like burn out on a classic. So that is number 10 something. I don't know. I'm looking at the stack I have left. But okay, back to horror movies. I think this is one of the most well-made horror movies. I just realized I don't have one of my favorite horror movies ever, but oh well. This is John Carpenter. This is John Carpenter's The Thing. The special effects in this movie is great. I love the pacing of this movie, the editing, the screenplay. Everybody is amazing in this movie. It's definitely an ensemble cast. I'm a huge fan of Kurt Russell, but I love how the creature just keeps morphing throughout the movie. There's never a final form. And I know the ending of this movie was going to like hint at a final form, but they didn't have enough money. Like, they ran out of money, and they were like, I guess we need to, be smart about how we finish this movie. So they changed it. And so I would be very interested to see what the original ending was. They kind of have like storyboards for it, but obviously this is a like 2K restoration of this movie. Watching it on the big TV, on like a 4K TV, is just incredible. I love the I guess color grading in this movie. Every color is just so vibrant, and the detail is just so rich. So I've seen this a lot throughout my life, and it never gets old. So John Carpenter's The Thing. You can see the stack is getting big. So this one I have to be very specific on because it's not all 14 of these movies, but it is Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. It's one of my favorite movies ever. I love Hayao Miyazaki. I did a tier list, and Alfonsina actually asked me to do reviews on the movies that I did S tiers on. And so I am going to do that at some point, but I want to do this video first. But Spirited Away is just so awesome. I love the story in the movie. I love all the characters. Chihiro. I love watching her evolution throughout the movie. One of my favorite scenes of all time is her on the train with No Face and that little pig baby thing. And Miyazaki has said that's the climax of the movie. Like, that's the big, what, if it was an action movie, it'd be the big action scene at the end. But for him, that's the climax, because at this point of the journey, she has become independent and able to make decisions and act on them. And every time that scene plays, I cry. And I just love that scene so much. The music is incredible in this movie. I never skip the credits. Like, usually I just, like, exit out of the movie when I finish. But, like, watching that movie, it's just, like, I just sit there while the credits play, and I'm just, like, watching it, just thinking about the movie. I was first introduced to this in high school, actually, when I was in a photography class. And our teacher would always show a movie, like, the last day of class. And this was the movie she showed, and I was like, why are we watching, like, a kid's movie? Like, it's so dumb. Because I was a freshman in high school. You know, I was 14 or whatever. And we only got through, like, half the movie, because class was about, you know, an hour long. But what I'd seen of that movie, I loved. And so I think I rented it on Netflix later, and I ended up watching it again. And I loved it, and I actually tried to buy this back then when I was, like, in sophomore year of high school. And it was $400. And I said, fuck no, I'm not buying that. I never even had more than, like, $50 to my name, like, at that age. And it was, I want to say, junior year of college, and a few years ago. But I saw this on, like, Mercari, which is kind of like eBay. I saw this for $90 on there, and I was like, yeah, I'll pay that much for it. And I bought it, and I've seen all the movies now. I've gone through all the essays in here. I love this release a lot because it has all the production notes that Miyazaki made when he was making all these movies. So he would always have a press conference before he began making his movies. And he'd be like, here's what I want. Here's what I want the music to be like. He would always draw a painting. Well, I guess he would paint a painting. And it would be like something that captures what he wants the movie to be. So I believe the one for, what's that movie? I think Castle in the Sky. It's the part where she's coming down from the sky, and there's that crystal that glows. And, like, that was the big one that, like, sparked all his ideas. But I love all these movies, but Spirited Away is my favorite. So that is a number 8. I don't know where we are. I'm going to put it over here. So this one is another recent one. If you didn't see my, I guess, my Criterion Collection video, that should be out by now when I'm filming, or when I'm releasing this video. I talked about this movie and how I was introduced to it in Will's class by randomly grabbing it off the shelf, because we had a project where we had to screen movies for the class, like, outside of class time. And you had to go to, like, 2 or 3 of them that semester, and each person had to, with someone else, screen a movie. And I screened Tampopo. And I loved this movie when I grabbed it off the shelf, and I was like, yeah, I'm showing this for class. We watched it, loved it even more. And then, like, a week later, after I showed it, Criterion announced it. So I lucked out. I almost bought the DVD because I just loved the movie so much. But this movie is all about our relationship with food. Just to sum it up, but the story of the movie is that there's a failing ramen noodle shop owner who is kind of losing her touch because her husband left her. And she lives with her, like, young son who's, like, 8 or 9, who gets beat up all the time. Nobody likes him. And mobsters are hanging around the ramen shop being like, come on, baby, I'll marry you. And there's a very young, not very young, but there's a young, what's his name? Ken Watanabe. So there's a young Ken Watanabe who plays like a punk milk delivery man. and he and his, I guess, supervisor is driving through the rain, and they're listening to an audiobook about ramen noodles and how to make it expertly from, like, I guess it's a book written by a ramen master. And he talks about it, and they get really hungry, and they're like, oh, fuck. So they stop by the first ramen shop, and it ends up being Tampopos. And it ends up being Tampopos, and she is having an awful time. She's not boiling the broth right. Everything's just failing. And he gets Ken Watanabe's supervisor. He wears a cowboy hat. He gets in a fight with the mobsters, and he's like, get out of here, you know. And she ends up housing him and, like, kind of helping him get better. And she feels like she has toe to him, if you're a real-time fan. But she feels like she owes him a debt, you know, for, you know, helping her out. And so she's like, can you help me, you know, be a better ramen cooker? Like, do you know anything about it? And he's like, oh, I'll think about it. Like, your ramen does suck. And the rest of the movie is them helping her. And they have a lot of fun meeting other people to, like, get better at cooking. And within this movie, there's a lot of vignettes about, like, society's relationship to food. Whether that's sexual, medical, romantic, you know, all this stuff. And there's a lot of fun, like, little scenes that have nothing to do with the story that kind of explores our relationship with food. And this is just one of the funniest, most charming movies ever. But don't watch it hungry, because the director brought in world-class cooks to make all the food that are on the screen. And every scene with the food, you see the guy's hands cooking it. And they're actually cooking it. It's not like fake. So you see, like, bacon, you know, boiling or whatever, the grease. And it's just, all the food looks so good. But it's one of my favorite movies. I love this cover so much, of a guy eating ramen, and you see all the little things that you see in the movie. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. So this is number 5. So we are in my top 5 now. This is one that I'm really happy that I bought recently. It just came out on Era Video. It is Tremors. So this is another movie I grew up on. I used to go to Blockbuster, if anyone remembers that, and rent this on DVD, maybe even VHS. I think it was VHS we would get it. And we would watch this every weekend because it was just so much fun. We should have just bought it, but we didn't. But Era Video just released this on 4K with, like, a lot of different special features. Like, you get a huge poster, which I'm not gonna ever hang, probably. It comes with a really big essay book, which is really cool, talking about the movie. And it comes with the movie itself and, you know, a bunch of interviews, documentaries, and all that. And I'm so happy to own the definitive edition. I don't think I'll ever have to buy the movie again. So that's really nice. And it's a limited edition, because usually they don't have the poster and the booklet. So I wanted it immediately, so I pre-ordered it last year. So this movie is just so well written in the script. Every scene that later becomes an attack scene by the graboids, every scene, it starts with the loudest sound, or people stomping on, like, wood or knocking over buckets. And because the big thing with the monsters in this movie is that they're attracted to sound and vibrations in the ground. So this movie is just so funny too. It toes the line, though, from having it be totally silly and, like, dumb, but also having some serious, you know, horror moments. And there's a lot of people that you know in this movie. Kevin Bacon is in this movie. Fred Ward, who does a lot of like little movies. The girl from Jurassic Park, Ariana Richards, who plays Lex. She's in this movie. She jumps on a pogo stick for like 99% of it. But this is like an ensemble cast. The effects are really well made. Yeah, this movie is just so awesome. And the older I get, the more that I appreciate it for the technical aspects. So that is number 5. Oh. So this one is the final Japanese movie. This is my favorite Japanese movie ever made. And that is Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. A 3.5-hour action movie about samurais who get hired on to drive away bandits that are coming. So if you've seen The Magnificent Seven, this is what it was based off of. This was made in 1954. It is so epic. I love this movie. Every actor is amazing. I love Toshiro Mifune. I love Takashi Shimura. Everyone's just great in this movie. I think it's Kurosawa's best movie. Everyone loves Rashomon or Yojimbo or Throne of Blood, Kagemusha, all those movies. But I think Seven Samurai is my favorite. I've seen it about 4 times already. And I talked about it already in another video, but this is film school in a box. It comes with like 5 essays. It comes with over 5 hours of special features. It's just a really great release. And for a movie as epic as this, being made so long ago, it is so well done. Like, all the fight scenes are great. The dialogue is just 10 out of 10 perfect in my opinion. Kurosawa has a really fun, I guess, trope or element of his filmmaking that he has throughout all his movies, where wise characters will just have the best lines ever. Because there's like one line where the village elder is telling the, I guess, the second in commands in the village to go hire the samurai, and they're like telling the village elder like, hey, like they're gonna take our grain anyways, we should just roll on our backs or whatever and just try to lessen the damage. And the village elder is like, you're worried about your beard when your neck is on the line or something like that. And it's like so many little great lines like that throughout this movie. And for a 3.5-hour movie, it feels not long at all. Each scene is amazing. I love the romance between 2 characters in this movie. It's just one of the best movies in my opinion. So that was number 4. So this one may be a shock by how high it is on the list, but it is David Lynch's Eraserhead. This movie is what got me into the weird of like films. So I was a huge David Lynch fan growing up. I loved Elephant Man. I loved Lost Highway. Movies like that were a little more understandable. Although Lost Highway, I still don't understand that movie. But this was his first movie he ever made. And I'm a huge fan of Twin Peaks. And Jack Nance here, he's the main character. He plays Henry. And Jack Nance is in Twin Peaks, and he's like much older, but I love the visuals in this movie. Everything is just so weird. And it's just a really fun time. It's fun to try to interpret what's going on. The little baby in this movie is fucking weird. I don't know how they did that. I assume it's a cow fetus, but this movie is just so well done. Not many people like it. If you do like it, that's good, because it's one of my favorites. So that's number 3. So almost done. this is number 2 now. So this is my favorite, one of my favorite movies ever. I have watched it so many times. It is a great companion piece to House that I showed earlier. And this is Dario Argento's Suspiria. I have this on special edition 4K. And the restoration is insane. This is another 1977 movie. So this movie barely even has a story. It's like an hour and a half of just visuals and weird dialogue. But this movie, I don't even call a movie. It's more of an experience. The audio and the visuals in this movie is what makes it for me. I love the use of color. It's I guess the story of this movie is that an American woman goes to a German ballet school and discovers that it's inhabited by a coven of witches. And that's the entire movie. There's not much else that happens in this movie. But this movie is definitely an experience. I do want to one day take like LSD or like mushrooms and watch this. Because I feel like that would be the best experience ever. Not that I've ever done them, but this movie is just so well made. I love the colors of this movie. The soundtrack is amazing. I love a lot of Dario Argento's works like Deep Red, Phenomena, Opera, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, all those. So this is my favorite by him, and it's one of my favorite movies ever. I've revisited it a bunch. I watched it like 5 times before I ever owned it, and I've seen it 5 times since. So that is Dario Argento's Suspiria, my number 2 favorite movie ever. So it's funny because this is actually 6 movies, but one of them is like a honorable mention. But my favorite movies ever is, of course, The Lord of the Rings, the extended cuts, all in one sitting. The only way to watch it, in my opinion. Every year, I rewatch all these movies in one sitting. I turn it on at usually 9 a.m., and I go all the way to 9 p.m. I have watched it many different ways. I've seen it sometimes where I just watch Frodo and Sam's scene. Sometimes I watch it with just Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Sometimes I just do it without any Frodo or Sam, so it's like I don't hear from them again after Fellowship when they all split. But the filmmaking is amazing in this movie. It is amazing how much control that Peter Jackson had over these movies. And I can't wait for when they do a 4K box set, because they technically have one already, but it has none of the special features. And there's like 20 to 30 hours of special features on this set that I have. And it has like, I want to say like 10 hours of special footage per movie. Or special features per movie. And that's what makes it for me. Like, the movies are really amazing, but these releases have like 5 commentary tracks per movie. It has dozens of documentaries. They have entire, like, it's so hard to like express how much I love these sets. And I want to go on to talk about the Hobbit movies. So the movies themselves are not good. And I want to give a big shout out to the special features on this. Because you go from the moment that Guillermo del Toro got hired all the way to when they finished making this box set. And the behind the scenes for this movie is just so amazing. I love it. It really cleared up a lot of questions that I had when, like, I'd watched all these movies in theaters, but like I was like, wow, something is going on behind the scenes and we don't know any of it. And then this one, Peter Jackson just trashes everybody. And it is like, oh yeah, like for Lord of the Rings, we were given 3 years of pre-production before we started filming. So we had all of the costumes, the weapons, the sets, everything done before we even started filming. And then in this series, they're like, oh yeah, you have 5 months before filming. Get to it, Peter. And everything fell apart. So there's a point early on in the first movie when, in the behind the scenes, where Peter Jackson was living on 4 hours of sleep a day. And at one point, his kidney busted because he got an ulcer on it. And he had to be rushed to the hospital or he would have died. Because he was drinking so much coffee to stay alive. And he got taken out in the hospital for an entire month. And then he came back and they were like, yeah, you lost a month. Get to it. And then it was like they were approaching the end of the second movie when it was just supposed to be 2 movies. And Peter Jackson at one point is like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. At all. We have to do a 3rd movie. So I'm not going to have it done on time. And Warner Bros. Was like, we're only letting you do that because that's going to make us more money. And it's just there's such a night and day difference if you watch these back to back in terms of the special features and the movies themselves. Because Lord of the Rings aged well on all the special effects. And I can't wait to watch it on 4K to see, if anything pops out. Especially the CGI. But in this movie, it just looks awful. So, these are my favorite movies ever. I love the special features, though, on this. This is just the best ever. I watch it every year since middle school. All of the extended cuts. All in one go. It's a yearly event for me. I've had many people do it with me. I've maybe about 4. It's just, they're the best, in my opinion. And I can't wait for them to release all of these together in one 4K box set with all the special features, because that is so important to my enjoyment of these movies. Because I remember watching these when I was in middle school, the movies, and then I didn't know what special features were. And I remember I was just exploring the main menu, and I found on the Two Towers disc the making of, and I was like, holy shit, there's so much that goes into making a movie. And I was in middle school, so I was dumb, but I rewatch them often, and the special features at least. And it's just, if there's any way to learn how to make a movie, it's by watching all of these together. And I just thought of something. I've never seen all of these together in one day. I think that would be 20 hours. Because all the Lord of the Rings movies are 12 hours exactly. If you don't skip around like I did. Like I do sometimes. But all the Hobbit movies I think are 8 hours total. Or 7. But these, I grew up on them. I love them. I saw them all in theaters, I think. Fellowship, I don't think I did. But these have dominated my life since kindergarten when Fellowship came out. So these are my favorite ever. I think that's it. I think that's all the movies. I want to give a special shout out because I forgot about it when I was making this. To, if I can find it. I want to give a special shout out to The Witch and Hereditary. I forgot about them. I was just going down my bookshelf and just grabbing stuff. But The Witch, I think, is a very strong horror movie. Especially in today's, movie landscape where we still have to sort through all the garbage. But I really love Hereditary. I think it's one of the best American horror movies ever, along with Rosemary's Baby and whichever ones I talked about here. But I want to give a shout out to Hereditary because I had a really fun movie theater experience watching this, because this is a movie I went in totally blind. I only knew the name of the movie and that people were calling it fucked up, in a stomach churning way, and I was like, sign me up. And so I went out to the theater, I paid my ticket, got popcorn or whatever, and I went and saw it, and I was the only one in the theater, so I was super happy. Had the whole theater myself, was right in the middle, knew nothing about it, and this movie, it's not as scary as I thought it was, but watching it, knowing nothing, and being like, what the fuck is going on? Where's this movie going? Was so much fun. And I remember I was sitting there with my knees up to my chest watching it, like, oh my gosh, that is so scary, even though this movie uses all the tropes of, like, American horror movies from the 70s all the way to the 2000s. But it does it in such a creative way that I love it. And there's not a single jump scare in this movie. I hate jump scares. They're a bane to my existence. Because it's not scary when a loud sound comes on. It's startling. And I hate it. So, just a big shout out to those two. I love those. I forgot about them until I was filming. But I think that's it. I hope you guys like this video. I know everyone's going to be really happy to know my favorite movies, just to kind of have a base on, you know, what my tastes are, what I enjoy, you know, and I know Alfonsina will be happy to know what my favorite movies are, because she's has a log of movies, and a lot of them I was like, watch those are so good. And so, thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.